the KELOLAND Digital Desk, I'm meteorologist Scott and Mundt. This is Whether or Not for February 23rd. It's Monday, starting Monday cold, but we do have warming temperatures on the way. Yesterday was cold, had a high of 22 in Sioux Falls after a morning low of 2. And you can see how that compares to the averages, both being well below average. As we take a look at some of the stats for today, we're forecasting 33, closer to average. The average high temperature today is 35. And I've seen the morning low fall as low as 2 below, so already well below the climate average low of 15. As we are looking at skies to be mostly sunny in many locations today, there will be a couple of exceptions from time to time. Clouds will thicken for a period or two in central to east central South Dakota this afternoon. Otherwise, expect a southerly wind and a warmer day today compared to what we had yesterday. But look how thick the clouds get for tomorrow. And even with that thick cloud cover, I think we'll remain dry. We'll have Pacific air overhead. We'll have strong northwest winds. Those northwest winds will help mix up the atmosphere. Also bring down some warmer temperatures because we will have Pacific air overhead. So we are looking at a warmer day for tomorrow. And then we'll see if we can get a light wintry mix to occur as we do get into Wednesday. By midweek, things may start across western South Dakota with a light wintry mix and then eventually move to the southeast as we get into the afternoon. And those are snow showers, what you see in blue, maybe extending from here down towards southeastern KELOLAND, including Sioux Falls, Mitchell, Chamberlain, can get a couple of snow showers, light accumulations, if any. Keep in mind, too, that temperatures in our forecast are expected to warm to the middle 30s, so we will cool a little by Wednesday as compared to what's on the way for tomorrow. Now, in the meantime, for today, we'll have strong southerly winds. Some of these wind gusts will range from 25 to 30 miles per hour. Maybe a couple of pockets will get some stronger wind speeds this afternoon, getting close to that 35 mile per hour range from Clark toward De Smet. By 6 o'clock this evening, still at southerly winds of 15 to 20 miles per hour with the occasional higher gust. And then I'm really interested to see what happens along the Coteau. You can see near Lake Benton, we could have a wind gust of 40. That may happen around 9 o'clock this evening. So we'll continue to follow some, we'll say, gusty winds as we do get into the late evening hours across western Minnesota. Our forecast for today, temperatures will be warmer than yesterday, 20s in northeastern South Dakota, mostly sunny. High of 33 Sioux Falls, 37 Mitchell, near 40 in Lake Andes at 39. And then we do have 40s from Pierre, south central South Dakota, Winter 48, Rosebud 55, 52 degrees in Phillip, and 57 in Rapid City. Tonight, temperatures will fall to the teens and 20s, so not as cold, but northeastern South Dakota. We'll probably have our numbers fall to the teens. And for tomorrow, temperatures will be warmer, clouds will be a little thicker, and this time around, we'll have northwest winds of 20, 30, 35 miles per hour with the occasional higher gust. But temperatures will warm to the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Coming up on today's show, go over a couple other February stats for you. And along with that, we'll take a sneak peek at the climate average for snowfall in March and April. Also take a look at our pattern and our extended forecast. Those, of course, do go hand in hand, as we'll be joined by meteorologist Brian Karstens. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back to Whether or Not. It's time to cover more February stats. And some of this will be a review of what I did last week, but this is not. You know, we talked about the precipitation last week, how it's been very, very little, not only in Sioux Falls, but a couple of other cities across the area, central, even in the western South Dakota, Rapid City, very little precipitation. We know about the snow, the blizzard that we had earlier in the month in northeastern South Dakota. But this first graphic here is looking at the least amount of snow in February for Sioux Falls. Now, this year, we are sitting at 1/3 of an inch, 0.3, okay? Compare that to years that we've had under an inch, and we've had 10 years since we've been doing record keeping in Sioux Falls, which I think covers 132 years. We've only had 10 years where for the whole month of February, it's come back at less than an inch. And I think that comes out to be 7.5% of the time that it's come back being less than an inch. May happen this year. We only have a couple of days. We have this week left, and then that's it. We do have a snow chance, couple of snow chances that we'll watch closely. One comes in on Wednesday, and then another one for the first half of the weekend on Saturday. We'll watch as cold air returns. Might have a couple of flakes of snow in there. Nothing's looking like a big system by any means right now. But we'll see if we do get over an inch for the month. Otherwise, yeah, we'll be one of those years where we end up at being less than an inch, where it doesn't happen that often in Sioux Falls, coming in at less than an inch for the whole month. And this hasn't changed either. We've had rainfall amounts, liquid precipitation. This is a look at the precipitation. Sioux Falls, Huron, Mitchell, and Pierre, still at 1/100th of an inch. Rapid City able to pick up on some light precipitation. I think it was Friday. They're now up to 4/100ths of an inch. And again, this all ends up in the top 5 for driest Februaries for all 5 of these cities listed. Let's see. It could tie for second in Sioux Falls, could set a record in Huron. Mitchell could tie for second. Rapid City now in third. And Pierre is in second for driest Februaries on record. And here's a story that I did for today, just looking at the days with 50-degree weather and warmer, as well as 60-degree weather and warmer. And you can see that this month, this year in February, we've had 10 days of at least hitting 50 degrees in Sioux Falls. Of that 10, it's been 60 and above for half of those at 5. And that matches the maximum that we've had in 2017. So if we do hit 60, and we have 60 going in our forecast for Friday, hey, that could set a record in Sioux Falls with having the most days of 60-degree heat in February for Sioux Falls. And you see the other cities here. We'll go through this list as well. Aberdeen, we've had 7 days, 50-degree heat, 1 day of 60-degree heat. In Pierre, we've had 10 days at least hitting 50. You see, we average 4. The maximum been 18. We won't get close to that. And as we do take a look at the 60-degree heat, we've had 5 this year. We average 1, and the maximum's been 7. So we're pretty close to at least tying the max. We'll see what happens as we do go through the week. But I always find these things at least a little bit interesting. Now, as far as looking forward to the spring, this is our climate average snowfall for March and April. So I'm getting off of this February stat for a little bit here. We'll talk about March, April. Looking forward, we have a climate average of around a foot in Sioux Falls, just a little under than that. In Aberdeen and Pierre, and 20 inches of snow is the climate average for March and April in Rapid City. And I think that accounts for, when you look at the climate stats, that accounts for a little bit more than a third of their total snowfall for the season. So Rapid City is about to enter their snowiest season on average. We'll see what happens this time around. And we'll talk about that extended forecast and be joined by meteorologist Brian Karstens. Coming up, stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back to Weather or Not. Being joined by meteorologist Brian Karstens now. And Brian, your camera looks good. Okay, let me just adjust it because I forgot that we have to do this. We always get lost sometimes, even though we work KELOLAND this morning together.
We're always prepping and talking about the weather, and then you got these little things like moving a camera.
You're upstairs doing cut-ins still.
We are, yeah.
And then
busy.
Yeah, and you come down and join the digital desk. I did a couple of things earlier for the show, and sometimes we get lost on not necessarily different tangents, but we're talking about the weather, on things that we can improve with this show, coming up with different ideas, and even for KELOLAND this morning. So as we do take a look at what's going on for the next several, well, we're running out of days in February.
The end of the month is near. Yeah. Getting toward
Wow.
the beginning of meteorological spring.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up.
I didn't mention that on TV today, but that's true. It's March 1st is the official start of meteorological spring, and astronomical spring not too far behind. And you can really tell now, too, with the sunny days, the sun angle is just getting better and better. So even though it was a cold weekend, we're going to recharge a couple of different times this week, and that's going to give us, some days to kind of break things up a little bit.
Yes. But just because, spring's around the corner, like you said, and it's spring, March, April, we can easily still get snow. And I showed this a little earlier ago about our climate average of snowfall for March and April and what the total is. And when you look at the total, it's over a foot in Sioux Falls. And that accounts for maybe around a quarter of our climate seasonal average, which is around 45 inches for Sioux Falls. Rapid City, this is going into the snowiest season that they typically get, March and April, with 10 inches and above for both of those months to come out with a total just a little bit over 20 inches of snowfall. And you see we're just shy of a foot in Aberdeen and in Pierre. So just because, we get into March, April, we know it can still snow. It can still snow in the May, for crying out loud. That, don't be too disappointed when we do get snow, when we hit the meteorological spring. It's all part of the season.
It is. Yeah. And most of us that have lived here a long time know that it does snow. But it's always a nice refresher to know those numbers. The thing about the April snow, though, that is mostly weighted because of 1 year, 2018.
2018. Over 30 inches of snow. Was it 32.1?
It was around, somewhere between 30 and 32. I don't remember the exact number, but it was so overly inflated. Because,
was it every weekend? I think it was every weekend we had a blizzard, close to a blizzard.
Major snowstorms hit. And
we'll remember that one, just like people remember Halloween of 1991.
Well, and when it's something completely different like that, you don't forget it. But the thing about it is that, March used to be one of the snowiest or the snowiest, and now has come down the rankings a little bit. So
yes, in Sioux Falls, I think it's third. Rapid City, March is still first, followed by April.
Yes, and it is an entirely different climate setup in the Black Hills, because in April, you still depend on, or you still anticipate these big, large low pressure systems structurally to come into the plains. And then the backside of those lows will oftentimes hammer western South Dakota with moisture that they use to get through, the summer. So it's kind of part of the experience we usually anticipate. So whether or not we get all of that this year, timing's always different. Things change. But one thing, Scott, I wanted to bring up on my weather graphics machine here is just the temperature going back and forth. I think we established this, last week for sure. We talked about tug of war a little bit here, and we're still kind of wrestling with that because ultimately we have colder air. We obviously established that this weekend, the ability to cool back down, but also the ability to warm back up. Okay, so that's an example later this week, Thursday into Friday, more above average temperatures. But will that continue? And I think right now it's safe to say the weekend will turn down again. And one thing we're kind of going back and forth on, and I think we'll expand, is how we settle on the first week of March. And if you recall last week, our conversation was built around above average temperatures returning. Most of the modeling is still agreeing with that on the ensembles, but the deterministic European, which is what you're seeing here, is probably a little more biased towards some infusions of cold. So that's something to acknowledge. It's, I've seen times where the control run of the Euro will take the cake and it'll score, a Hail Mary here, or, a big, it'll outsmart everything else. But, a lot of times, Scott, I remember, using that more before the days of AI. And now we've got AI running parallel to this, which is, last, 6 to 12 months, we've seen that all coming on the scene. And a lot of the AI data is not nearly as cold. So I would just kind of sit back. I love to test our theories on this. I like to see how the pushing and prodding up in the Arctic actually goes. I mean, you can clearly see you've got, on this run here, plenty of that dislodging out of Greenland. That's actually where this is all coming from. But
Okay.
those blocks have to come, and that's that'll be the learning process as we get into March.
Yeah, and something that we'll continue to follow along with that would be our chances for snow. And we talked about that, of course, on KELOLAND this morning. We do have that chance coming in Wednesday. But as the push of colder air comes in for this weekend, we'll see how things line up. Now, we showed a graphic, and we'll probably talk more about it coming up in the next segment. But we already showed a graphic during KELOLAND this morning trying to line up maybe some heavier snows, not going to say how much, for the northern half of South Dakota. And we brought up, too, that dating back all the way to November is when these models latch on to those snow locations, it's been pushing it to the south when it ultimately moves through.
Yeah, and most of that is because a lot of times those storm tracks, as they would come out, 3, 4, 5 days out, the modeling would put up what we call the baroclinic zone. That's basically your wrestling of the temperature gradient. And what would happen is as we would draw closer and closer, the cold air would barrel through a little more, and then it would shift that contrast a little bit south. And then everything follows. The low pressure track would follow, and then everything else just falls in line. And so, yeah, I mean, if we end up saying, for example, this weekend we barrel through and get colder weather, absolutely, you could run a scenario like that. But the question I have, too, in the back of my mind is, how much snow can you get? We don't see any of these systems being fused to Gulf moisture.
No,
and that's one thing. In March and April, that's when you can really get those big blockbuster systems, when you fuse the polar and subtropical jet streams, and then you get the Gulf moisture involved. That's not what this is. This is not that at all. I have to turn to a different page in our textbooks, and that's where we land on this kind of scenario next week and this weekend.
And we really haven't had a system like that this year.
Not at all. No, this whole winter, I haven't had one. We had a couple that looked like maybe, and then once we kind of things actually came out into the plains, for at least for our local area, no, not at all.
It was most of it was the moisture we had in place, or maybe it brought a little bit with it, and then the placement of things again. Started to come in from the north. A lot of it was northwest flow, come in from the northwest. Maybe it was able to latch on to some moisture to the south, where we did get some of our heavier snows in November and December. But since then, it's been, less than 4 inches, I think, for January and February in Sioux Falls.
Yeah. And even look at the blizzard last week up in Aberdeen. That low, kind of fits some of those definitions coming in from the southwest, but it never really had, it kind of developed as it was pushing through South Dakota. And that was a case where you were able to really kind of tightly grab onto some moisture at the last minute, produce a localized blizzard, heavy snow, but it wasn't like, we were dealing with that the whole way. It kind of developed there and then ended up being a bigger issue into northern Minnesota. So, this year's been a little goofy. We haven't had the traditional big Colorado lows coming in where you could march it all the way through. We've had just little bits and pieces.
Well, Colorado hasn't had much snow itself either.
Well, right, yeah. You start with that right alone, and you know what we've been dealing with. But, hey, March is around the corner. A lot of things are still up for grabs.
And, Brian, I think we'll take a look at what the AI is doing for temperatures coming up next. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back to Weather or Not. Talked about showing the AI forecast, Brian, right before we toss it to break, because we mentioned that it's going against what the European model, the traditional European model, deterministic, what you were just showing here just a couple of minutes ago. It wants to keep this warm weather around. Now, I'll just go through a couple of the numbers here. This first stop, it's saying 55 for a high. Now, that's on Friday. I think our official forecast this morning, 60 on Friday. I like to push those numbers up a little bit. We've been able to hit 65 times this month, and I just went through that earlier in the show, how many times we typically get there and what our record is. And if we do hit 60 on Friday, that will be the most 60-degree days we've had in Sioux Falls on record in February. So then we go into next week. Now, this is looking at March 4th, back to the middle to upper 50s. Now, when you look at the previous runs here, it had the lower 50s from yesterday afternoon, even some 50s coming in from the run before then. Otherwise, the temperatures have been colder. So it's trying to push those numbers to be a little bit warmer. And then you notice the yellow colors that we have out here. Those are numbers in the 60s. And that takes us to about the 8th and 9th of March. And the latest run here also has a temperature at 56 degrees going into, what's that, March 9th, March 10th, somewhere around that time frame. So it is showing temperatures that can rebound to those numbers back to the middle 50s. That's what the AI is doing. Let's bring up what we usually show here with the European model. So there's that 56 on Friday, and then look what happens. In comes the cold air, and that's the graphic that Brian showed. The cold air comes in this weekend. We'll have that chance for snow, but it wants to keep that cold air around as we go through the first week and a half of March, showing temperatures only in the teens, 20s, and on occasion hitting 30 degrees. But Brian, you mentioned too, this is more or less, the only model out of the European that's trying to show that.
Yep.
The cold air going into that first week and a half of March.
Yeah, so it's kind of sitting out on its own on a limb there. So it is worth acknowledging because it is, after all, the European model, and we don't like to discount that too quickly. But also at the same time, there's other evidence that's not as aggressive with that. So let's put out maybe a hold right now on a verdict there. We can watch today, watch tomorrow. See how things are trending. I want to see how this weekend, if we end up getting colder than currently advertised. I know we're dropping highs from the 50s, near 60-degree levels on Friday, and then down to maybe 20s this weekend. So that's a big drop. And then let's see what recovery we get after that. Sometimes, too, Scott, depends on if we actually get some snow on the ground.
We get a little bit of snow. How about this morning without the snow? 2 below.
Without snow.
In Sioux Falls.
Yeah, that's always a big deal. If it's below zero. I was
impressed.
Yeah, it gets us definitely into, a little reminder that we've got a little strength left behind winter, which is okay. We need to probably have a little more winter yet. Wouldn't feel like spring otherwise.
Snowblower still in the back of the garage.
Collecting dust.
I probably should dust that off just in case.
Leaf blower.
That's our time for this latest edition of Whether or Not. Thank you for joining us, and have yourself a great day.